Bitcoin is currently around $102,000. We had a little bit of a pop right before market open, right before going back down. Obviously, we had the government shutdown come to an end last night, and there's just a lot of just uncertainty all around. And I just kind of want to caution you guys of what I think could happen next. And obviously, I want to give you the bullish and bearish case. So before I get into this, make sure you subscribe, smash the like button, turn on bell notifications. Everything I say here is very time sensitive. Now, I think that when you look at the overall like equities and stocks and gold, obviously gold is going like, it's going back up towards all-time highs. We have stocks kind of consolidating. We have just like kind of like no like broader data reports because of the government shutdown. And I think that naturally that's going to drive a lot of uncertainty when it comes to the broader market. And obviously Bitcoin has been going basically down and to the side, right? So I think that the big kind of concern that I have short term is obviously if we see stocks pull back and we see just a whole macro kind of pullback, that's going to be pretty painful when it comes to Bitcoin in specific. And I do see a scenario where that could happen short term before we get all this new liquidity basically going back into the markets. There tends to be a little bit of a lag with like good news, and obviously I think that it's a really hard time for everybody, especially with like companies, but just like your everyday person, right? And so you need to think of this as a liquidity type of like environment, right? And most people that do have money, they're pretty much in the stock market, and most of the people that kind of got into crypto, other than obviously the major institutions and countries and all that kind of stuff, or just your like kind of average everyday people that are trying to basically beat inflation and make money, right? And there just hasn't been any kind of like really new money going into cryptocurrency. And so what happens is if we see a overall broader market, crash with these stocks, like I said, I have two very specific key levels for Bitcoin to maintain. I think if we can hold above $98,000 on a weekly, I think that we'll still be intact for at least to the midterm, right? At least going into like the latter half of Q4. The big area for my concern is about $75,000 for Bitcoin, but I'm not really, we're not going to plan for that for now. I'll obviously update you guys a lot sooner if that seems to be the case. Obviously with altcoins, if Bitcoin does consolidate a little bit or go down, that's going to be really painful for altcoins. So I think that this just kind of serves as a reminder that regardless of wherever we are in the cycle, you always want to maintain a heavy Bitcoin exposure because that's going to be the backbone of your portfolio. And even Bitcoin in itself is very volatile. And what tends to happen is whenever we have these massive moves, either to the upside or the downside, Bitcoin usually leads the way regardless. So by being Bitcoin heavy, you basically mitigate the downside, and then you'll obviously have exposure to the upside, at which point you can obviously, speculate a little bit more on risk on, maybe meme coin, maybe not meme coins, but like layer ones or like more, speculative crypto assets. But, I do think that right now is a really uncertain time to say the least. And, obviously if stocks continue to rally and we start going into this, quantitative easing cycle with like more liquidity, maybe some more like clear directions of however we want to go with like, the Fed policy, the government, all that kind of stuff. I do think that we could still set up for a very bullish Q4. My base case is still that we go towards at least somewhere close to all-time highs for Bitcoin. And at that point, I'm really going to be looking to take out some of my profits. I've kind of been taking a little bit, on the way up, but everything's been kind of down to the side. And so pretty much what I've been doing in this time is just kind of consolidating my altcoins into mostly Bitcoin, and then, layer ones that I think are going to at least be around next cycle, because at the very least, even if altcoins go down 30, 40, 50%, whatever, you always want to be into some sort of asset that you have faith in long term. And I think it's, also worth mentioning that most of these altcoins aren't going to be here in the next like 10 years. So you need to really think about what your strategy is and what your goal is, because I think that we all know Bitcoin is going to be like the main driver. Like that's going to be the only, in my opinion, for sure, crypto that's going to stand the test of time. And you don't want to be stuck holding the bag like, previous cycles. That's one of my biggest mistakes that I ever made. My first 2 cycles was I just never took profits because I saw that my altcoins were down like 30 or 40% off of their all-time highs. And so I was trying to wait for a better time to sell, and things just kind of, started going down from there. And that can absolutely happen this time around. And just take it from my experience, like you don't want to be doing that. Like you always want to cut if it makes the most amount of sense for you. And you always want to ask yourself the question, what's going to hurt the worst? If I hold this and it goes down, 60, 70, 80%, because some people are still sitting on some sort of profits, or, would it hurt less or more, holding on and then like, obviously trying to see if you can sell it a little bit higher, right? Like, do you want a 50% gain or a 70% loss? So again, we are on uncertain times, to say the least. I'm going to update you guys on what I'm seeing. I think short term, if we can get above like $106,000, $107,000 Bitcoin and go towards like maybe 115, then that would be the bullish case scenario. And I think that that would be pretty good for the outlook of the remainder of this month and probably December. But I think if we start breaking down from here, we see the stocks pull back, you need to really be cautious. And again, make sure you're subscribed and smash the like button, turn on bell notifications, because I will be updating you as I go. I'll see y'all soon. Bye.